What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today it is finally here. The roster has finally dropped from Scout Scoops or Ride and Rosters, whichever you want to call it, and we're going to be getting started on our San Francisco Giants franchise on MLB The Show 21 on Next Gen. We're on PS5 here, so I cannot wait to get into it. I want to begin by taking a look at the team, take a look at the roster, as well as take a look at where we stand record-wise and within the division, and show you guys exactly where we're starting off with this franchise and where we plan to take it. Now, the first thing within this franchise that I want to show you guys is that we are sitting at 19-3. The thing that I actually want to show you guys is that we have simulated the results that the Giants have had so far in real life. They are doing surprisingly well for a team that is aging and doesn't have that much talent on it. And, they are technically first in that division in real life. Now, I don't think that that's going to hold up with the Dodgers and the Padres sitting in that division as well. And it's certainly not going to hold up within a franchise mode here on MLB The Show 21. So our path forward is going to be maybe a little bit more difficult because we did start out with a pretty good record, and so it's going to hamper our ability maybe to get as good of a pick in the draft as we would like. However, I think that the most important thing to do today to start off is to take a look at the roster and give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of what this roster looks like. This is the overall roster, and compared to a lot of other teams in Major League Baseball or compared to other teams in the game, we're pretty lackluster. Not a lot of top-end talent. We do still have some veteran presence with guys like Buster Posey, but the thing that you have to understand and the thing that you have to definitely identify here with this team is that a majority of the team is over the age of 30 on the MLB roster. And so you guys can see everybody on the first page of players here is over the age of 30. And basically, you go down and it doesn't get any younger from there. We will be highlighting some of our best prospects as we go forward into today's video, but I do want to highlight some of the veteran talent here on the team and talk a little bit about the fact that, we will be looking to probably move on from a lot of these guys that are sitting here on one-year contracts. Guys like starting pitcher Kevin Gossman sitting around on a one-year contract costing us a lot of money. And from that money perspective, I think that it's worth noting that we have a pretty high budget for what this team really is, with $164 million, because of some of these veteran players that are earning, I would say, well over what they're actually worth at this point in their careers. So let's go ahead and highlight some of the future of this team, because this is one of the stronger farm systems within the game, I would say, and one of the advantages to this team is we have a lot of young players, and the guys that I would like to highlight today at starting pitcher are Logan Webb, who is definitely going to be part of the future of this team, as well as Sean Hiel, I believe is how you pronounce his name. We also have Connor Menez, and then the one that I'm really excited about is Seth Corey. We do have a couple of other, B potential guys tossed in here, guys like Gregory Santos, Kyle Harrison, that absolutely could be contributors down the line. But the guys that I'm looking at are the guys that I named, especially Seth Corey, definitely looking to take over the starting rotation within the next couple of seasons. Moving on to the bullpen and the relief pitchers in general, we really don't have a lot of future here in the bullpen. We have a guy by the name of Zach Little, and he looks to have a lot of potential for us. I think that he will be a staple in this rotation eventually, but one of the things to note is that this bullpen does have a couple of older, talented players that might be worth keeping around for a couple of seasons. Guys like Maranta, Brebbia, might not be bad to keep them around for a few seasons as just kind of staples in the back end of the bullpen, but there's really not a lot of future talent here to be had with the bullpen. There are a couple of potentials and whatnot, but getting up there in age, so not a lot there. This is one of our weaker positions and something that I'm certainly going to be looking to address with potential trades with some of these veteran players at other positions. We might try to get some relief futures in return. Moving right along to the closing pitcher, we do have Jake McGee here, who is a pretty good closing pitcher if you ask me. We moved Caleb Berriger over to closing pitcher because out of all of our relief pitchers, I thought that this guy has the most potential to take over as a future closer for us. Really nice break at 95 and really nice velocity. So I think this guy really has what it takes to become a future closer for us, and I like the prospect and outlook of having him be our future closer. Then we start to move into the infield and outfield positions, but before we get there, I want to talk about catcher because this position is going to be a huge staple for this team. Now, we already have veteran Buster Posey around, who is a fantastic player still at this point in his career. However, the thing to note here is that we are pretty much stacked at the catcher position, and this is a really rare position to be stacked at with so many A and B potential players that are young. We're going to be having a lot of trade pieces here. Now, we're not going to immediately trade these guys away. We will look to try to develop some of these players, but I want to point out that Patrick Bailey is more than likely going to be the future catcher for this team. At least that's the plan for now. And guys like Joey Bart, Chadwick Tromp, Brian Torres, all guys that I would like to see develop even further and maybe bring in a really nice price in return to help this team out in the future. Taking a look at the first base position and our first infield position, again, older players up top, not a lot in terms of developmental prospects at the first base position, so another position that I will be potentially looking to address as we move forward with trades and whatnot at the deadline, and we'll talk more about our plan in a bit here, but first base, certainly a position where I'd like to get at least one more B potential prospect or better to compete with Logan Wyatt. I do like what I see out of Garrett Frechette. I think that he has some potential there, but kind of really lacking in terms of developmental prospect and potential at first base. Second base is pretty similar to first base, not a lot, and actually might even be worse than first base. Not a lot of potential or talent here either, but the thing that I'll say is that we have some pretty solid prospects at both third base and shortstop, and we could potentially look to move some of those players over to these positions of need, and we'll see what happens with that. Now, as I mentioned, third base, one of our stronger positions here, especially with the prospects that we have. We have both Casey Schmidt and Luis Toribio, who I think will be fantastic players for this franchise in the future, for us anyway. And, I think one of these players, if not both, could be moved around. I think that maybe Casey Schmidt would fit in well as a second baseman or a first baseman. We'll see how these guys develop, but I really like the prospects of both Schmidt and Toribio as future potential staples within this organization. Shortstop is where we have literally the face of this franchise for the future, and that is Marco Luciano. This is the guys that, if you remember anybody's name out of today's video, make sure you remember Marco Luciano. This is the future of the San Francisco Giants, and he will be the future, hopefully, at shortstop here. In addition to that, though, we have guys like Will Wilson, who's a young 68 overall B potential, almost MLB ready type of player there, and then Tyler Fitzgerald. These are guys that I think could impact for us, and this is why I say I think we could maybe move at least one of these guys over to second or first base whenever the time comes in order to fill in some of those gaps over at those positions. I also really like what we have going on in the outfield. We have a lot of potential in the outfield. We started with Lamont Wade Jr. out here in left field. Now, he is 27, so I don't know how much development we will get out of him, but I like the prospects of having him around. We moved Elliot Ramos, or however you pronounce his first name, over to left field, and he went up to a 69 overall A potential. I love this move because we are pretty stacked at center field, and I think he could turn into a really good long-term player at left field. And then we move on to center field. Like I said, we have so much potential here. We have a lot of B potential players, everything from the guys that are already at the major league level down to our AA guys. We could really expect to see a lot of talent rise through the organization at center field, and I wouldn't be hesitant to play these guys at left field or right field if need be. Like I said, we have 5 guys here with B potential that are all young enough to really take that mantle and turn themselves into an all-star type of player. And then right field here, a little bit weaker at right field, but we have a couple of guys that I want you guys to keep in mind their names. Mike Yastrzemski, potentially a guy that could be moved, potentially a guy that could stick around. We'll see what happens with him, but he has, the pretty good making of a right fielder. I'd say that he would be pretty solid to stick around if we did want to keep him. But then we also have Austin Slater, who's a bit of an older guy, but still some developmental years left there. And then Franklin Labor, who I think is, maybe the future at right field. He's got a pretty good arm, pretty good fielder, and he's pretty well rounded. So that's how our roster stacks up. And let's go ahead and talk about a little bit how we're going to plan to move forward with this franchise for the future. So as I had mentioned earlier, the San Francisco Giants are sitting at 19-13 in real life. As of recording this video, they do have another game today against the Padres, so we'll see what happens with that. But this is a team that I think is, in my opinion, exceeding expectations. It's not a team that is capable, in my opinion, of making a deep postseason run or winning a World Series, especially when you consider the competition within the division. And so, honestly, they might be hurting themselves a little bit by competing quite so much this year. What I will say, though, is that competition could help them in terms of trade value because, like I said, they do have a lot of these older players on the roster. And that leads me into our trade block where we have quite a few players listed up here that are, veteran type players, older players that are on the last year of their deal that we will be, potentially looking to move on from. And so the guys that we have on the trade block here are Kevin Gossman, Alex Wood, Evan Longoria, Donovan Solano, who is the kind of contact type second baseman that I didn't highlight earlier, Kurt Caselli, who is a pretty solid catcher, but somebody that I think would help maybe a competitive team. And I think that goes for most of these guys on this list, is these are guys that could help a team that is, looking for a deep playoff run. And likewise, guys like Alec Dickerson, Anthony DeSclafani, Chadwick Trump, Mike Tauchman, Joey Bart, and then we go on from there with a couple of others. So quite a few players here that are aging, that are on our trade block. Most of them, like I said, are on the final year of their deal. So maybe this team plays well. I wouldn't mind if they play well. I wouldn't mind if they play poorly. It's really about developing that talent that we have in the farm system. If these guys do play well, they'll increase their trade value and help get some return back for us for the future. We will be considering making trades as we move along. I think that we're going to, because we simulated up to where they are in real life with all of the correct wins and losses, I think we'll let these things play out a little bit, see how this team works out, and then come trade deadline time frame, we will start making some moves to bolster some of those areas of need that I had mentioned earlier and moving away from some of these older players, because like I said, the budget does concern me, especially with a lot of these guys being in the last year of their contract. They are certainly trade bait for teams that, could use that one player that could maybe set them over the edge for the season. So a lot of these guys are going to be potentially tradable, and we'll see what happens with that. I'd like to alleviate a lot of that budget that we have going on right now and start to look forward to the future and build up for the future. We're not really looking to be competitive this year in terms of playoffs or anything like that, but we'll see how things play out. I hope you guys look forward to this series, and we're going to be doing this more highlight style like we do with the Madden franchise, where we kind of jump into games, look at a couple of highlights, talk about what's going on with the team, look at stats, all those different things, highlight the draft, highlight, what we have to look at, whether we get all-stars or home run derby type players. We'll jump in and out of all that type of stuff. We're going to be doing various different things, from playing games to simulating games to managing games. So we'll get to see a little bit of all of that. I hope you guys look forward to seeing this franchise. I'm super excited for it. So with all that being said, leave a like on the video if you do want to see more of this. Subscribe to the channel if you do want to see more of it. Hit that bell notification button so you're notified every time I upload a new video. And comment down below with what you guys would like to see next. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys have a good night.